What's up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And Andrew, we're here to talk some Carolina football. Obviously, the Tar Heels are about a week into fall camp as it stands right now, and a lot of talking points. Obviously, you've been covering all the way. Dean has been covering all the way as well. I've been pitching in when I can. I was obviously out of town a little bit last week as well, but there's just a ton of stuff to talk about from the first week of fall camp, and we're going to do that right here. So, AJ, you were out there last Thursday, August 5th. That was kind of the first day of fall camp for the Tar Heels, was open to the media, and that's kind of where I want to start with this conversation. What were your just kind of first impressions, overall takeaways, for lack of a better word, from being out there and seeing this team for the first time since, a few months ago during spring ball?
Well, I think going back almost a week to that day is relevant now because those dots continue to be connected since then. In the interviews that we've done with Mac, we've done 13 players, including Sam, who had Phil Longo, the offensive coordinator, Jay Bateman, defensive coordinator, and we've had Mac. So we've had the head coach, 2 coordinators, and 13 players. And everything that I saw last Thursday has been backed up through conversations with everybody in the program that we've talked to so far. It's night and day from what it was 3 years ago. And really it is in many respects from what it was 2 years ago, Mac's first year. This program looks like a significant Power 5 program when you're at practice looking around. And I have enough experience. I've seen enough different college programs practice. It's not, my whole world isn't just UNC. I've been to other ACC practices, quite a few. And so my frame of reference isn't just the Tar Heels. And I saw really good Clemson teams practice and Virginia Tech teams back in the day when I was with Fox. And this looks different. I mean, those are really good teams, but I think that this club looks the part. Mac said at least twice, I think, in the last week, we're going to look really good coming off the bus. And when you go to practice and see them, yeah, they look really good coming off the bus, even though they're not coming off a bus. It's you go around from position group to position group, and the difference is significant. Now, and I'll use this example as one. And I actually asked Mac about this. The defensive line. Now, a couple of years ago, and remember we used to have in-person stuff for interviews. We'd have post-practice interviews in football. And when you started, you go to practice afterward, and you would see the different position groups as we do the interviews on the side of the field. And the defensive line was right near where we did a lot of the interviews. So you'd see the guys getting a few extra reps with the sled or whatever it was. They were working on different things. And after you got past the first few guys, it was like, okay, well, some of those guys are going to travel. They're just a part of the team. God bless them for working hard and having the opportunity to be a part of this. Okay. Now, when you look at it, there's 10 guys on scholarship, and the 10th guy, for the sake of discussion, could be someone like Clyde Pinder, a 4-star kid a couple of years ago, or a Christian Varner, or a Kevin Hester, who was a basketball player transitioning to football, but is an amazing raw talent. They've got 10 scholarship guys that look the part of the defensive line. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be a really good defensive line. I think there's still questions about how they're going to have waves. They're going to be fresher, but how good are they ever going to be at one time? That remains to be seen. But they'll be better because they're deeper. They'll be better because they're fresher. They'll be better because the different variety of skills that some of these guys have, they can use guys more situationally. Bateman even said the other day, Pinder is a pass rusher. So they may put him at nose guard in pass rushing situations on occasion because that's more his specialty. So they don't have guys who are good at pass rush, but not very good at taking on 2 blockers or filling the gaps against the run on the field. They're going to have guys out there playing to their strengths. That will make them a better group overall. They didn't have that before. The last time they had that, to be honest with you, a stretch during Butch, and the last time Mac was here. But I don't think they ever had 10 at one time that literally looked the part like they do right now. That's an example. There are a lot of others that we can hit on during the course of this podcast, but it just looks different. A snapshot of practice last Thursday, and then the interviews since then tell me that everything that we thought was heading in the right direction in this program is heading in the right direction in this program.
Definitely. And that's kind of the takeaways that I think we saw a little bit in the spring as well and kind of got that idea. But I think being back out there like you were for the start of fall camp when a lot more guys are healthy, this is the team that you're going to be seeing. You've had a few transfers and whatnot. I mean, completely agree with what you're saying. I think this is a team that, from what I've seen from the photos and everything from that practice, because obviously I was out of town and wasn't there, this is a team that just fits the part, and from everything I've heard as well. And I'm going to throw this analogy in as well, this example. I'll never forget back in 2016, we talked about this game a few times, Carolina versus Georgia, first game of the year. I was at that game, not from a media standpoint, but I was still in college at the time. But I was at that game with my dad and my brother, and I think my mom was there as well. And we were sitting down. We had seats in the lower deck, really good seats, and kind of the corner of an end zone. And I'll never forget watching Georgia warm up before the game, particularly on the offensive, defensive line side of the ball. And I remember talking to my dad about it and being like, man, you go look at Carolina. And that was a good team. Granted, it was a Carolina team that was coming off a really good 2015 season. We all know what happened then. And, that 2016 team was a very solid team as well with, Mr. Trubisky at quarterback and everything. But you looked at those offensive linemen and defensive linemen at Georgia, and then you went down and saw what Carolina was working with. And it was size, speed. It just didn't compare to Carolina. I mean, Georgia's O lineman and D lineman just had so much more size. They looked so much more of the part. And I think I remember saying to my dad, okay, this is what a top 10 SEC big time program looks like. Fast forward 4 or 5 years to where we're at now. You're seeing that with Carolina. Like you mentioned, you go and look at that offensive line and that defensive line. And you say, man, I think Mac used this quote when you asked him the question, but he said, we're going to look good coming off the bus, like you mentioned. But he also said, we're not just going to let you play because you look pretty. So, they look good out there. Yeah. They've got to continue to work and continue to develop to make it happen on the field. But, yeah, no questions about it. This is a team that looks like a top 10 program physically and on the eye test. And it's no coincidence that they're, coming in at, number 9 and number 8 in a lot of these preseason rankings and whatnot.
That game you're talking about, let's remember the first 2 games of that season, Tamon Fox played 75 snaps.
That's crazy.
Okay, Tamon Fox. Mm-hmm. He was number 12 then, and he's still number 12 at Carolina. And the difference is he doesn't stand out there right now. And that's not a slight to Tamon. Tamon is going to be a very, very valuable player. He's played 2,517 snaps in his Carolina career. He has given this university a ton in exchange for his scholarship. Mm-hmm. Okay. And everything that he's getting out of this. He's got another year. He's got grad school and everything else. He's got the connections that he's made. He's gotten a lot out of it, right?
Absolutely.
Carolina's gotten a lot out of Tamon Fox as well. But when you look out there now, Tamon doesn't stand out. He was a guy that when he showed up, he had to help early on. Mm-hmm. They needed him to help early on. They've reached a point now where they don't have to have Jahvaree Ritzie help early on, but he will, and that makes him better. They didn't have to have Des Evans help last year. It would have been good if he was a little more ready. It would have been good if his progress wasn't obstructed by COVID like it was. You look at Des Evans now, and part of what we see now may have been in place a year ago had everything been normal, right? But he stands out now. So my point is that the program has gotten to a point now where they don't have to get their high-end guys as soon as they come in to contribute or give them something. But when they do get it, it's going to be nice. It's going to make them better. That's where the difference in the program is now. They can have a 4-star kid take a while. They can absorb that. They can have a 4-star kid that doesn't pan out. And they could absorb that. Previously, if you guys go back to the Jalen Dalton era, it took Jalen a while. He was a 4-star kid. He was the prize of his recruiting class. And Carolina fans were stressing over when is the light going to go on for Jalen. We used to talk to them about it. And we would say, basically, hey, Jalen, how much progress you making? Well, I still got to get my butt down because he'd get in a 3-point stance and his rear end was too high. If you watch practice and you'd see the guys in drills, you'd see 4 or 5 defensive linemen, Stephen like a sled drill. Jalen's derriere would be higher than everybody else's. He was also the most gifted guy out there. It took him a while to get that going, and the program needed him to get going quicker. They want these young guys to get really good and help out right away if they can, but the dying need is not there as much now. There's a little bit more grace period for a guy where they can, a guy can get himself physically ready and mentally ready, and the program could still continue to go forward. Yeah. Go back to Des Evans, a perfect example. He had to learn the playbook. He had to get bigger. Now, when you watch him out there as opposed to a year ago, he's a different human being. He's a different football player. He moves around with a different level of confidence because they're at a point now where he doesn't have to go in and be trusted with 50 snaps a game, whether he's ready or not. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the neat things about where they are right now. And that's what depth does. That's what accumulating talent does. That's what building everything up does. And every room in the program, including some of the rooms that are unproven, they've got dudes there.
Absolutely.
A lot of dudes
all over the board. No doubt about it. And that's something we obviously talked about back in the spring as well. Let's stay on the defense. And then we can go talk a little bit about the offense before we wrap it up. I think the biggest takeaway that I've gotten from watching these interviews along the way and listening in, it just seems like, especially from the Jay Bateman post-practice interview a few days ago, it just seems like from a coaching staff perspective, they're just so much more confident and, for lack of a better word, comfortable with the personnel that they have across the board on the defensive side of the ball. I think they're more confident in the depth that they have across all the positions. I know you asked Mac, we've talked a lot about the D-line so far, if that's kind of the most improved position group and everything like that. And you talked about having the potential of playing 8 to 10 guys down there as well, which is huge when you think about how far they've come in that time period. Now, we've obviously had our concerns, for lack of a better word, and our discussions about the lack of experience down there in terms of guys actually having a ton of playing time. Of course, there's a lot of talent down there. We've talked about that kind of being maybe the position group across the board that has the most question marks about what kind of impact they can have, just because it's so young and doesn't have a ton of reps down there, live reps, I should say. Defensively, I think Carolina's set. I think there's a lot of, explosive guys around, a lot of moving parts, and a lot of guys that can play a lot of different positions. But, I know you've seen the D-line now. I know you've talked to guys about it. Do you still have those question marks about just how good and what the ceiling can be?
Absolutely. Yeah, because I'm going to go basketball here for a minute. And the older Carolina basketball fans will be able to understand this. Back in 95, Carolina played Kentucky in the regional final down in Birmingham. And that Kentucky team went 12 deep. That was a Kentucky team that overcame like a 31-point deficit a month earlier and won at LSU, right? Carolina didn't have much depth. I mean, it was, Serge Zwicker, somewhat, Pierce Landry, a walk-on, and, Pat Sullivan, who had a bad back. That was their depth. And Pat Sullivan wasn't nearly the player then that he was pre-injury, right? Mm-hmm. And they weren't very big. They had Wallace, they had Stackhouse, they had McGinnis, they had Calabria, Donald Williams. They weren't a big team, didn't have a lot of depth. People said, well, Kentucky's just going to wear them out. The difference was that Kentucky could never put 5 guys on the court at the same time that were as good as the 5 Carolina had. Carolina won the game. My concern about this defensive line for Carolina is I know that Phil Steele has been decorating Ray Vahasek a lot. I know that Miles Murphy's got massive upside potential. I know that Tamari Fox is a really smart guy and a guy who's grown a lot. I know that they've been very pleased with the progress that Jaleel Taylor and some of the others have made. But how good are they at any one time? Because I think their highest end guys are the youngest ones. So they're still learning stuff. Keyshawn Silver was banged up a little bit in spring, maybe didn't get all the quality reps they would have liked had he been healthy. Jahvaree Ritzie has got unbelievable potential, but it's just potential. They haven't played in the game yet. So until we see otherwise, that will be a question mark. And I think it's fair to be a question mark. It's not a criticism. It's just we got to see where the high end is with their best group on the field to know how good the defensive line can be. I do think, as I said, the line will be better because it will be fresher, because it will be more situational, because they have those options. Having options makes you better because Tim Cross is going to be able to say, okay, I need you in this situation. I need you in this situation. Go in there and do that. Even Jay Bateman said the other day that they're at a point now where they could tell a guy, hey, go in there 5 or 6 plays. This is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to keep it on. Your strength plays to what they're doing now more than maybe the other guy out on the field. So when you have depth, you have options. Mm-hmm. It's like in baseball, the more different types of pitchers you have situationally, it can get you out of jams in the 6th inning, or you get your setup guy and your closer. When you have a really good bullpen, it gives a manager tremendous options. On defense, when you have guys with the kind of skill sets that Carolina has, it gives you options. But that's going to be a question until we see otherwise. Do I think it could be a really good defensive line by the middle of the season? I absolutely do. But I'm uncertain now because we have to see it. We have to see what Ritzie does in games. We have to see what Miles Murphy does in 35 or 40 snaps in games. We have to see what Keyshawn Silver is able to get him. And we have to see really how deep they are. How comfortable is Bateman and Cross going deep into that group? but they're
Absolutely.
going to be fresher in the fourth quarter. Mac talks about A&M and Notre Dame. They're going to be fresher. So maybe that breakaway run that A&M got in the fourth quarter that sealed the game, maybe that guy gets hit in the gap somewhere. Maybe a lineman fights off a blocker and slows him so a linebacker can make a play and that run never happens because he's a little fresher. If that's the difference, that's a pretty big difference. And I think the potential is there that they can have that difference in the group at some point during the season.
Definitely. Let's talk about the secondary real quick before we move on to the offense. Obviously, a big talking point coming out of spring ball was some of the movement that we saw in the secondary with Jaquarius Conley in particular, kind of moving to safety, some stuff with Don Chapman as well. Obviously, you've got Tony Grimes out there, who I know Bateman was full of praise for him during his interview. He also said some really, really positive things about Kyler McMichael and kind of made me a little bit more curious to see exactly what his role when you consider what's kind of going on with Storm Duck as well. So from what you've seen so far in that secondary position, what have kind of been your thoughts on how that's shaken out and kind of the comfort level that the, Jay Bateman and the coaching staff in particular kind of have with all the movement that's going on back there right now?
Well, regarding McMichael, Jay Bateman said that he can be elite this year.
Big praise, yeah.
These coaches don't throw those words around.
Nope.
So that's what I wrote in my 5 things we learned from fall camp. When a guy is getting praised, when a position group is getting praised by this coaching staff, public praise, it's legit. Mm-hmm. They're not trying to build up confidence anymore. No. I mean, if anything, they have to kind of tame things a little bit because the expectations are so high. But when Bateman says Kyler McMichael could be elite, and when he praises him being a top 50, he was number 53 player in his class in 18, went to Clemson for a year, played 110 snaps, whatever it was. He does have a ring, so good for him. But then he sat out as a transfer and played scout team for a year. Not many kids are going to do that. So when kids do that, they're serious about something. They're going to embrace whatever change they've accepted to do, they've agreed to do. So his game has grown. He was inconsistent last year. I didn't see enough of practice that one day to be able to tell you much difference from my eyes. So I'm going to totally lean on Jay Bateman on this one. And you have to believe him. If he says Kyler McMichael could be elite, that means they'll have 2 elite corners. We don't know what's up with Storm Duck right now. They say that he'll be ready to go for the Virginia Tech game. But, there's been a question over Storm back when he was going to come back last year. He even told us he thought maybe he might come back from Miami or the bowl game, but didn't. Then I guess there was a lingering issue in spring practice. We were even there for a few of them, Jacob. We saw him, but they weren't really doing much. And then he wasn't even at the first practice. So, I guess this is a different injury. So can't really comment on that. But one thing I do like about the quarterback spot, and Bateman talked about this as well, Obi Agbuna could play.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's a backup. Day Hollins could play. Day Hollins has been pressed into duty the last 2 years in the middle of the season and has stepped up and done a pretty nice job. So he's got all that experience behind him. He's kind of a grizzled guy, but he's if Duck is healthy, he's the 4th corner. When Duck's not healthy, he's the 3rd corner. So you've got older guys. And Boone's in his 3rd year. He's played a lot of special teams, been on the field some in the secondary. So he's been out there. He's a 3rd-year guy. He's smart. He's older. He's mature. They've got a lot going on at corner. They've got a lot going on at safety. Gio Biggers has stepped up and really taken off. Bateman told us back in the spring that Cam Kelly can be fantastic one series, so the next. I don't know where he fits in with all this, but he's certainly a guy that's played a lot. Certainly was a highly decorated kid coming out of high school. Another one of those dudes. They love Trey Morrison, jack of all trades. And then Conley, I think Conley's going to be a beast at safety. He was talking to us on Tuesday about why he was moved to safety, because they thought that that's where his future is. Right. Think about it. He's got a linebacker's toughness. He hits like a linebacker. He's back there at bandit. And he was talking about, run fits. Hearing safeties talk about run fits, and that they can already hit because you've seen them at nickel hit people, that's an intriguing thing. If they can play the run, if the defensive front's better against the run, and the linebackers are what they've been against the run, and they're better at safety playing against the run, then they're going to be a much, much better defense. I love Conley at safety. Yeah. And we haven't really talked much about a little bit about nickel with Chapman. Bateman did give DeAndre Boykins a lot of praise, and he's really coming for him. We saw him in the spring, Jacob.
Yeah.
And he actually looked like, okay, his head wasn't spinning too much. He's kind of getting it a little bit. So, again, there's options galore on defense. Even in the inside linebacker, a lot of guys are very intrigued by what Ron Power can do. And Cedric Gray's been in the program a little bit. He's been on the field in special teams. So, They probably can't afford an injury to either Jeremiah Gemmell or Eugene Asante, but otherwise they got options, they got depth, they got talent, and most of their highest end talent are first and second year guys. I think the defense is just going to get better and better and better.
Definitely. And I gotta throw this quote in too. You talked about power. I was gonna ask about the linebackers real quick because I think that's a pretty secure position with Gemmell and Asante up there. But to quote Jay Bateman, I think he called Power Eccles. I think he said Power Eccles is quote a dude. And he was full of praise for him. Didn't even mention Rara, who I know a lot of people have high
Well,
expectations for. But I mean, just
but you've seen them, but you
oh,
saw
yeah.
them. I mean,
Oh,
when
yeah.
you look out there, Power looks like a linebacker. Rara doesn't yet.
No,
Look,
100%.
they've told us that the weights on the roster, GoHeels.com, the official roster, they're goal weights. And it has Rara at 205. And when you watch Rara, you think, okay, that's a goal weight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he ain't
He
there
may
yet.
not be 205 just yet. That's okay because he is the quintessential sideline to sideline guy and he has time. Like they right now, as long as Gemmell and Asante are healthy, they don't need Rara to be that guy just yet. So he has time to add on a little bit of weight, build some strength, develop how, learn how to learn, right? Learn how to learn that position, learn how to read and react and all that kind of stuff. And in time, I think he's going to be a fantastic football player wherever they put him on the field. He's a football player.
Oh, yeah.
Who's an amazing athlete. And if he's going to be an undersized inside linebacker, he's the kind of guy that will work with because he's such a good football player. And if you watch his high school film, doesn't shy away from contact. He'll stick his head in anything.
He's not scared. He's definitely not scared about that. No. Yeah, I think the defense is in good shape and obviously some question marks with the D-line and how exactly they pan out and what the potential is there. But I think overall, from a coaching staff standpoint, more confident and a lot more comfortable with the personnel that they have across.
And let me add too, we didn't talk about the hybrid guys, the outside linebackers, but they're in really good shape there.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm telling you, Des Evans is coming.
No doubt about
Tamon's Tamon. And actually Tamon did look a little quicker, I think, when I saw him, but he just knows so much. Mm-hmm. He's a teacher. He's been working with Des a lot. They've developed a relationship and Des has been very open, everything Tomas has to say. Tyron Hopper got a lot of snaps last year. He's an older guy. Chris Collins is there. He's been around for another 4-star kid one day. They didn't need to jump right in and give him something, even though he was thrown to the wolves early on that ECU game and during that debacle of the season.
Yeah, it didn't work out too well.
So again, they got numbers. They got numbers everywhere, man. It's really impressive.
It is. It's a lot better than it was, not too long ago, 2019, when Mac first came in. It's night and day difference compared to what they've been able to do. And that's a testament to the recruiting they've been able to do, not only, in the transfer portal, but obviously out of high school as well. Now let's move on to the offensive side of the ball. For me, there's one word that pops out when I think about this offense, and I've seen some other people saying it as well, and feel free to disagree, but I think explosiveness is one thing that comes to mind. I think when you got a guy like Ty Chandler back there who can kind of do it all, it's still remaining to be seen what kind of player he'll be for the Tar Heels. But when you're fourth all-time in all-purpose yards at Tennessee, you have to be doing something right, and you have to be a guy that's just a playmaker out there. I think you've got some depth in that running back room as well, which, you talked to Ty Chandler for the first time last week, earlier this week it was. Whenever
it was Tuesday. Tuesday. During fall camp, every day's the same.
As I'm saying, it overlaps. Yeah,
we're actually recording this Wednesday morning, and they're off today, which is why we actually have time to record this.
Actually, have time to jump.
So we talked to him yesterday.
Yeah,
for the first time.
And I think, based on what he said as well, I think there's some guys emerging back there that can be can definitely share some of his minutes and kind of form that 1-2 punch. You look at the wide receiver room. I mean, Mac Brown was full of praise for that. I think he said Emery Simmons is just a very good football player, to quote him. I think he said Josh Downs has continued to improve a lot, and he's a guy that, Mac's been praising Josh Downs really since, late last year, particularly with his performance in the Orange Bowl. So I think you mentioned Justin Olsen off camera as a guy that people kind of keep mentioning. So I think there's definitely some depth in that wide receiver room. Obviously a lot to replace, which we've talked about countless times with Diami and Daz leaving, but overall, I think you've got a lot of weapons back there. You got Sam Howell at quarterback. Not much more to say about him. Heisman Trophy candidate, a guy that has a ton of expectations going into the season, and I'm sure he'll meet those based on what we've seen. And then you're returning all 5 starters at the offensive line. So I think this offense is in great shape. I think there's obviously a couple question marks at just how good that running back room can be, just how good that wide receiver room can be, and mentioning tight end as well, Garrett Ralston, Kamari Morales. I think Phil Longo was full of praise with them guys and said that Kamari Morales in particular has made even more strides, particularly, in his passing game and staying in the box and blocking. So I think you're set across all positions. Obviously, like I mentioned, a couple question marks at the high end potential of some of them. But I think overall, this offense has the potential to be very, very, very explosive.
I agree, although I still think that there's a pretty big question mark looming over the running back room.
Agreed. That's probably my biggest question.
Ty Chandler accumulated a lot in 4 years at Tennessee, but he was never at one point fantastic.
Yeah.
And part of that was because Tennessee wasn't very good, and they had trouble moving the ball at times. So I what I'm going to go by is what the coaches are saying about him and what teammates are saying about him. And he was asked yesterday, tell us about your game. And he said, well, and he's kind of modest, which is
very modest, yeah.
Which is refreshing. Not that guys that are brash is a bad thing. I think I like the nice mixture of it on a roster. But he said, I'm told I'm fast, so I'm going to say I'm fast. He is fast. Now, when we were watching spring, we're like, okay, we're waiting for that moment. We eventually saw it. Turns the corner really, really well. So when you have an offensive line that can block, sustain blocks, you have tight ends who can block and receivers who can block, which was a big part of those runs that Michael and Javonte got last year. Not enough credit went to the fact that receivers made their blocks downfield and sustained them. That's also part of what we'll see if this group can do. That, Daz did a pretty good job. Daz was a nasty boy. He's a football player. Yeah, so Daz had no problem mixing it up and blocking a guy and holding on to that block. And he got a lot of pride out of that. And, okay, Michael's running by me. Okay, I got good stuff.
Yeah, Daz loved it.
Lonnie Galloway does a great job of teaching blocking the wide receiver, so that'll be a big deal. I do think Chandler will be fine. I'm curious to know how many snaps he plays, what the snap breakdown is, because they were pretty much even with Javonte and Michael, but that was Javonte and Michael. This is a different situation. I wouldn't be surprised when they go to Blacksburg if let's say they run 80 offensive plays for the sake of discussion. But Ty Chandler plays about 55 because they need him because of pass protection. He's proven. They have time after Virginia Tech. They got Georgia State. They get Virginia at home. It could be a tough game, certainly a losable game. A little bit of opportunity if Chandler could give them those reps and produce some to get those other guys up to snuff. And who are those other guys? I think DJ Jones is the second one. My understanding is had he been healthy last year, he would have started in the Orange Bowl. When I watched practice that one day, and again, this is only on one day, but they generally run the rotations the way that they are. DJ Jones was second. And there was either Caleb Hood or Josh Henderson is the third guy. I think that's situational. Caleb Hood could clearly be your in-between tackles guy, your short yardage guy, but he can move. Let's not forget he was a quarterback. He was a quarterback who ran and threw for a lot of yards. He rolled out and did a lot of stuff. So he's athletic. He's got good footwork. He's got good vision. I think he's somebody that in time will be a really good player at North Carolina. And Josh Henderson, this is his third year as a junior, former four-star kid. We saw some pretty good stuff from him in the spring. We're going to really find out where he is right now because he has mega opportunity in front of him. But I think it's going to be Ty Chandler, probably DJ Jones, and we'll see how it shakes down. I think the question mark is still there. I don't know how good that room is going to be. I know how good that it has potential, and there are dudes in there, but we haven't seen those dudes do stuff yet. Wide receiver is a little similar, but not that much similar. I mean, they had 4 guys who caught 13 passes at least last year that are back, and one of them is Bo, and he's got like 80 career catches. Bo's fine. So they do have experience there. And look at what Downs did in the bowl game. Downs did offensively in the bowl game what Eugene Asante did defensively in the bowl game, gained a ton of confidence and asserted themselves as the guy there in that spot. And I think Josh Downs is going to be phenomenal. He's going to be a household name for Carolina football fans by the middle of October. I love Emory Simmons. I think everyone keeps talking about how Emory's the guy that could go deep. And Emory told us yesterday, I'm faster. They joke with me that I'm not that fast, but I'm actually fast. He said he's been clocking at 21 miles an hour on the GPS running routes. So they've got guys. I agree with you, Jacob. They could go over the top of the defense. Justin Olsen, they say, is going over the top of the defense. Let's not forget that they've got freshmen like J.J. Jones, I think, is going to be in the mix at some point. I love his potential. I love Gavin Blackwell's potential. Stephen Gosnell's gotten some mentions lately. He was also returning punts, something he did very well in high school. Wide receivers got a lot of guys. It's just a matter of getting reps. And Joffrey Brown, of course, super fast. He's faster than Diami.
Yeah.
So, I think by the middle of the year, people are going to think, wide receiver's not an issue.
Yeah.
I don't know. Running back could still be. I don't think any of the other position groups will be. Offensive line is going to be a lot deeper. It'll be interesting to see how many reps William Barnes gets and where he gets them as a reserve offensive lineman. And really, I think that they're in fantastic shape otherwise. Tight end's in good shape. Garrett Walston came back to win and to become a pro. And I think they're going to win a lot. And I think he's going to become a pro.
Agreed.
And the guys talk about Kamari Morales and seeing him run some routes in practice. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, keep an eye on Bryson Nesbitt down the road. Mm-hmm. Dina, who I trust implicitly, when she covered a 7-on-7 last summer, she told me, and I'm not going to do her accent, I'll try a little bit. Andrew, Bryson Nesbitt can run routes like a wide receiver. Well, I'm watching practice last week, and he's running around. I'm like, who's that receiver? Well, it's actually Bryson Nesbitt, a tight end. Mm-hmm. So, once again, Tina was right.
Yeah.
So they've got guys all over the place.
Exactly.
I think the only concern really is running back, and they need to be able to get a good enough run game that the RPO stuff matters and people respect the full RPO package, and it'll open up a lot of other stuff. And we might see some shorter passing stuff to the tight ends, especially early, as a means to sort of be a part of the running game in a sense. Mm-hmm. It's not the running game, obviously, but a lot of coaches will use that to sort of be part of their way of pounding the ball downfield. So
definitely, based on your conversations with the players and coaches so far, do you have a bigger question mark over the D-line or the running back room right now, if you had to pick one?
Well, running back room, because we've seen a lot more of the D-line guys do stuff. Mm-hmm. We've seen what Bahasa can do. Mm-hmm. You saw how much Miles Murphy came on last year. Remember how much he got through the line of scrimmage?
Oh, yeah.
Well, he's increased his squat by almost 200 pounds.
I did see that. That's unbelievable.
He told us that when he didn't know how to squat properly. He didn't do it right in high school. So last year he was squatting 325. Brian Hess is like, no, dude, this is how you got to do it. Now he's squatting 515. So imagine that guy with his athletic ability, his monster mentality, 200 pounds stronger with the squat. It's going to knock offensive linemen back. In fact, he says that he is in practice. So we know that Tamari Fox has been pretty good at times. We know that Jaleel Taylor is a guy who's got a lot of experience, and everybody's talking about him. So there's some been there, done that guys there to a degree. But other than Chandler, who played a different offense in a different program before, we don't really know much yet about the running back room. We know what these guys can become, but we don't know what they will become yet. There's nothing you can really pencil in other than Chandler's going to get a lot of reps.
Yeah.
And he can protect the passer, and that's another part of this too. They gave up a lot of sacks last year. And in that part of it, Sam says part of that's on him. He's got to learn to get rid of the ball quicker. But part of it's also on being pass protection with the running backs. The offensive line has to do a better job. It's a group thing there. It's not one or two things. It's 4 or 5 things, and they need to be a little bit better at that to keep people off of Sam, because you sure don't want him getting popped.
Yeah, definitely. Last thing I want to ask you, AJ, before we wrap this one up, Carolina's picked preseason Coastal champions in media poll. Top 10 in a lot of the preseason polls, sitting at like number 9 in the country in a lot of them. From what you've seen so far, from what you've heard from the coaches, from what you heard from the players, are you pretty confident that's a realistic or expectation, or a place that Carolina deserves to be right now before the season starts?
Well, I voted him first in the Coastal.
I did as well.
And,
yeah.
I think that's the first time I voted him first in the Coastal ever, to be honest with you.
No,
I voted for Sam for preseason player of the year. I think it's a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. So I think they should win the Coastal. I think that this team can win each of the 12 games on its schedule, but the odds of them stringing together 12 wins are very slim.
Hard to do, yeah.
Notre Dame's going to be very, very tough. Miami. Actually, I think most of the games are potentially losable because this is still a growing program. They're still in that, bad word, Jacob, process.
It is. It's true, though, man.
We talked about process all the time last year, and they're still in the process. Mm-hmm. They're still figuring stuff out. Remember what happened when they went down to Tallahassee last year at number 5 in the country. That lesson learned should help them when they go to Blacksburg. Yep. That should help them learn how to deal with the fact that just because a bunch of people voted you a number doesn't mean you are that number. Mm-hmm. And so the message that the staff has right now, there's 2 challenges that they haven't had previously. Number 1 is they were building them up before. Now they got to pull them back a little bit, right? The other thing is it was easy when Bateman knew that, hey, Miles Dorn's going to play 80 snaps today. Aaron Crawford, if they're on the field for 90 snaps on defense, like in the game against Virginia Tech, the 6 overtime game, Aaron Crawford's going to play 90 snaps. Absolutely. Now they have to manage the playing time, the snap distribution more, the situational stuff more, because they've got a lot of guys that deserve to be on the field. Remember when they just played Chaz and Jeremiah, that's it. They're playing every snap because they're so good. I don't know what they're going to do at middle linebacker this year, but they have options now. Where they look, this guy's got to get on the field, so they're going to get him on the field, and so they have to help the older guys or the more experienced ones that are the starters who are coming off understand why you're coming off. Understand that you playing fewer plays actually, and you're more productive in the plays you play, actually makes us a better team. So that's a challenge. That's not easy, but Mac did say he's got 10 of his 12 coaches have either been a part of a national champion or a part of an NFL team. I think they either coach in the Super Bowl or something like that. So they know how to handle lots of depth. They know how to handle egos on the field, but it's still a challenge. And it's a real challenge when it's a new, there's still a new blood, right? Florida State likes to call themselves new bloods in basketball. I mean, Carolina's still trying to get to the point where they could be one. So a lot of this stuff is still new. So how the staff handles that is going to be part of their big challenge this year, because there's so many parts of there. A lot of the games on the schedule are winnable, but the back half of that schedule we've talked about, Jacob, is where we're really going to find out what they're all about. They got Miami in game number 7. They go to Notre Dame. They go to Pitt on a Thursday night. I think Pitt could be ranked this year. They close out at NC State. I think NC State's going to be really good.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think the Wolfpack's going to win a lot of games, and they're going to, if Carolina's playing for something big time, significant, when they roll into Carter, Philly, that place is going to be a zoo, more than usual. Yeah. So, and I think that's great. I would love to see Carolina, NC State really good in football all the time, because that game would just be off the charts exciting every year. 100%. And I think it'd be good for football in this state. So, and I'm not dismissing the first 6 games. I think Blacksburg's dangerous. I think, tough one, yeah. I think the Wahoo's coming down. Chapel Hill's dangerous. Mike going to Georgia Tech. You don't really know. I mean, what's Jeff Sims like in year 2? Mm-hmm. What's that program like in year 3 of this regime? Do they start turning the corner now? If they do they find lightning in a bottle that game? Is Carolina flat when they go down there? So they have to learn how to be this kind of program where you're up every week and you've got and you're a bullseye for everyone every week. So because of that, the odds are probably pretty good that they're going to trip up somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking Notre Dame, and I'm not even talking Miami at home, maybe in Atlanta.
I think it's expected.
They go to Pittsburgh on a Thursday night and lose to a pretty good team, and Kenny Pickett, that guy who's probably going to play in the NFL. So this is not a cakewalk schedule. It's a challenging enough schedule that if some of their opponents are pretty good, and Carolina fans should root for that, it will help Carolina's CFP potential.
Definitely.
They got to win all the games now.
Yeah, high expectations, man. I mean, this is a program that's made tremendous strides since Mac came in a few years ago, and it's kind of crazy to think they're only really in year 3 of it. So it's going to be an interesting year. I think, I do expect it to be tougher than some people may expect. I do expect to slip up in there just because of where this program's at right now. They're only in year 3, but I mean, the eye test is definitely passing that, and I think they've got players all over the field that can definitely take them to that high.
And one misnomer too that some people have said to me, I've got a neighbor here. I go out and do my 5 miles every day, and I see him every once in a while. And I think he and other people think, well, God, they got to do it now while Sam's there. I think the way the program is layering itself, that they don't have to do it now while Sam's there. Agreed. I think they're going to get better and better and better, because they're going to be better, I think, next year defensively than they are this year. Mm-hmm. So obviously you want to take advantage of a great quarterback like Sam. He could be a generational player. We don't know. But I don't think the pressure is, boy, they got to do it now, because then they got to go back and reload. I don't think they're going to be doing that so much. I think this program is positioning itself to where they're going to be really good in 22 and really good in 23. And as long as Mac is there and they continue to recruit like they are, and they keep the continuity of the staff for the most part, I think this is starting to become who they're going to be for a while.
Definitely. Good stuff, AJ. Enjoyed it, man. Enjoyed kind of talking about this team and where they are a week into fall camp. And guys, for all your coverage from Carolina's fall camp and from the upcoming season, keep it locked to TarHillIllustrated.com. Great time to sign up to be a premium member as well ahead of the season, and with all the fall camp stuff going on, not to mention football and basketball recruiting, which is a 365-day-a-year cycle. So if you want to get more info on that, want to be locked in a little bit more to what's going on behind the scenes, get to hear from us on an individual basis on the boards as well, head on over to TarHillIllustrated.com. Link is in the description below. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. As always, guys, like, share, subscribe as well, and hit that notification bell too, because we've been uploading a ton of videos throughout the off season. That's only going to continue to increase with all the interviews we're having as well. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks.